Looking back at history, some names are universally recognizable. Julius Caesar, Benjamin Franklin, Marie Curie, Winston Churchill. We all know these names. Their impact on the world was significant. They changed the course of history. This story isn't about someone that changed the world. This is about a man who had one of the most absurd, eccentric, and remarkably lucky lives the world has ever seen. It's almost as if every decision he made, no matter how seemingly stupid, turned him a profit. This is about the American tycoon Timothy Dexter, or I should say Lord Timothy Dexter, a title which he gave to himself. There's not much known about him today. Most regard him as a man who bumbled his way through life and got lucky at every step. And I'm not so sure that's accurate. I don't know how someone could make so many seemingly bad decisions and get things right all the time. Well, you be the judge. This is his story. Born in 1747, Dexter entered the world into a poor Irish-American farming family in Massachusetts. He wasn't the brightest kid, and it didn't help that at the age of 8, Dexter's education came to a complete stop when he was sent to work on a farm. 6 years later, he secured a leatherworking apprenticeship. This was a huge deal. Apprenticeships provided a path to success that would be otherwise unattainable to a poor, uneducated farmer. Upon completing his apprenticeship at the age of 21, he decided to go into business for himself. Being a leatherworker was a really good living at the time, but it was still considered to be a lower class profession. He set up shop in a nearby town and quickly met and married his wife Elizabeth, a recently widowed woman with 4 children. This isn't a love story though. She was also stinking rich and had a large house. He began working out of the basement of her house in the wealthy area of Charlestown, Boston. His neighbors, who were some of the most powerful men in the continental states, regarded him as a dull, uneducated gold digger. This really got under Dexter's skin. He became obsessed with joining the upper echelons of society. His business was a boom though. Within several years he amassed thousands of dollars. And when the Revolutionary War broke out, the government began issuing its own currency, the Continental Dollar. Some of you may have heard the phrase, "not worth a continental." That's alluding to something that is near worthless. This came about due to the fact that the Continental Dollars were at the time actually only worth pennies on the dollar amount printed on them. Dexter saw opportunity here. It started with him accepting them as money for his work, but eventually he took all of his savings and those of his wife and bought boatloads of these Continental Dollars. When the war was over, the US made good on these. This is the equivalent of someone in 2011 sinking their life savings in a Bitcoin. Almost overnight, he became one of the richest men in the United States. This new wealth didn't usher him into the elite class though. He was regarded as crass and socially inept. And honestly, based on all accounts, I don't think this is very far off. To me, he's similar to a Peter Griffin type character that's trying to fit in a wealthy banquet, but just doesn't have it. He chalked up their bad attitude to Boston being a stuffy place and decided it was time to move. He and his new family headed back to Newburyport, where he began buying ships, and a lot of them. This is where the story starts to get very interesting. At the time, many of the wealthy elite were trade moguls, and he tried emulating them by getting into that business. Some of them convinced Dexter to send bed warmers down to the Caribbean. I know, bed warmers. The hot tropics? They were pretty much trolling Dexter. Once his ships got down there though, the captain managed to unload them to a molasses plant for use as a ladle in the refining process. This became another profit for Dexter. These same people that told him to send bed warmers down also convinced him to round up stray cats and send them to the Caribbean. Those same molasses plants bought the cats and let them loose in their sugarcane fields to control the rat population. He couldn't lose. This same song and dance played out over and over again. One time, he was convinced to send coal to Newcastle, England, the epicenter of coal mining in England at the time. The trolls were shocked when it turned out that upon Dexter's ship arriving, the town was several weeks into a miners' strike and coal production had come to a complete stop. His shipment was bought at a premium, netting him, again, another nice profit. With his even greater wealth from trade, He built a large mansion overlooking the water, adorned with over 40 larger-than-life statues of historical figures, and one additional statue of himself. Inscribed on the statue read, "Lord Timothy Dexter, I am first in the East, first in the West, and the greatest philosopher in the Western world." Based on that self-description, I think it's safe to say that he was both a bit delusional and full of himself. At one point, he held a fake funeral for himself. His family, who were fully aware that he was alive, were instructed to play along and mourn as if he were dead. Dexter hid with a nice vantage point so that he could see the whole thing. Over 3,000 people attended this fake funeral, and when he noticed his wife not mourning and casually laughing with the attendees, he came out of his hiding place and proceeded to hit her with a cane in front of them for not crying enough. I can't imagine how people reacted when he sprung from the grave and started committing domestic abuse. Since we're on the topic of ghosts and Dexter's clear lack of love for his wife, I'd like to make note of another crazy Dexterism. He would tell people that his wife had died and the person they were seeing with him was her ghost. He kept this up for a while. It was absolutely crazy. Around this same time, the nearly illiterate Dexter released his literary masterpiece, A Pickle for the Knowing Ones, also known as Plain Truths in a Homespun Dress. The book is a Tommy Wiseau-like work of art. It's a combination of an autobiography and a philosophical manifesto, but it's also incredibly misspelled and lacking any punctuation. He released another edition of the book, not with edits, but with one additional page full of punctuation marks. On the page, he also wrote that readers of the book could pepper and salt it as they please. If you take a look at the image, you can see just what I mean by an incredibly misspelled effort. A few years after he published this, Dexter passed away at the age of 59. Most of what we know about him comes from his book, and some accounts from his peers, who firsthand witnessed the craziness that was Lord Timothy Dexter. What do you think? Was he really a bumbling low-class guy that got lucky? Or was he maybe a crazy eccentric that took advantage of opportunities others couldn't see? I'm interested to hear your takes, so please comment them below. If you like this video, please click subscribe to get more videos of historical characters that the history classes miss out on. Thanks for watching.